Jake and Danny, hello, greetings.
Hello.
Greetings.
How are you?
I'm good. Where are we zooming from today?
We are deep in the pits of East Nashville.
East Asheville.
Nashville, sorry.
Oh, Nashville. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking North Carolina there for a second. Don't ask me. Perfect.
So it's another cool town.
It's a big night for you. We get you before you go on Jimmy Kimmel. So I don't know. You thinking about the night ahead or what's going on?
No, we're all very excited. Kimmel's definitely one that we've always, wanted to be a part of. So very excited.
Okay. So you're going to be going live, I guess, via satellite from Nashville today.
Yeah, that's right.
And are you calling Nashville home nowadays?
We are. Yeah.
Good for you. So Battle at the Garden's Gate. Congratulations, by the way. And before we get started, I just want to do this because when I was getting dressed to come in for this today, I saw on the bottom of my drawer a little keepsake that I don't wear anymore because it's a little tattered. It's a little bit worn and torn and faded, but I wanted to make you guys feel at home. So go Tigers.
Mission accomplished.
Now we do.
Good stuff. Listen, congrats on the album. Prior to this release, which I had a little bit of time to digest today, always liked the stuff. But at the same time, I listened to this and frankly, boys, I see this as Greta Van Fleet's debut.
All right.
I like that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I see it as more of an ensemble piece. It's not riff driven like people would expect. It's very, very spacious and it's pretty deep. When you were making this, how did it shape out like that?
I think some of the sort of objectives that I think we set out to have in the creation of this album were intentional and some were not. So I think, a lot of the collection of these songs came from the shelves of the shelves of old history, and then some of the songs were sort of new crafted songs, and some of the songs came while we were working in the studio.
Yeah.
So I think it was in that sense, it's always sort of an organic process in the way that we work. And I think that some of this was intentional and some was unintentional. But I think ultimately the sort of product that we ended up with at the end of this was a sort of representation of where we are now. I think musically, instrumentally, performance-wise, as storytellers, lyrically and musically in that sense, and as artists, yeah.
So what we've been hearing is that the album has been shaped by the last 3-4 years. Of course, you're still pretty young. You started out when you were very young. You've been together for 10 years now. It's only in the last 3 or 4 years where things really kind of ramped up. And you probably were a little isolated in the garage in a quirky town called Frankenmuth, Michigan, and didn't really have wide eyes about the world around you. And all of a sudden you have this new awakening and probably the best education that anybody could have. And that's the education of travel, or travel is education. And that has shaped a lot of the ideas on this album, hasn't it?
You hit the nail on the head, definitely. We're young, we're constantly evolving and like sponges, we're just kind of taking in the world. And I like that you mentioned that it's kind of the best education that one can have. It really is, it's perception, but it's also how you make it, as you're traveling too. It's about not falling into the void of chaos.
Yeah, I think so. You can read so many books about great adventures, but I think that you'd grow tired of that at some point and you'd want to go out and have an adventure of your own. And I certainly think that 3 years ago, a bunch of younger gentlemen then playing blues and rock and roll in a garage would ever have imagined that we'd have been to experience sort of what we have, the sort of journey that we've taken up to this point. And like you said, yeah, I think like Danny said, you hit the nail on the head. It's sort of what we've experienced in the last 3 years is certainly a representation of this album, I think, in many ways.
Do you remember a particular moment where you really opened your eyes to a world outside of where you came from?
I don't know if there's one specific moment. I think that would be really kind of hard to tell, but it was definitely when we started traveling the world. and you kind of start to realize that, you know, everyone is so different, but at the same time, we're all the same. You know, we're the human race, and everyone's the same, and we're all here. And especially when we find ourselves in venues, and there's this energy that is the same everywhere you go. But you know, the way people live life and spirituality and everything, it's you know, and we're very open to all of it.
Yeah, yeah, I think like Danny said, it's sort of that moment kind of appears when you're sort of aware of the fact that you're part of this global community, in a sense, where you're like, oh yeah, we're all one. We all, you know, we're all living the human experience in a way, and to be able to see so many people, culture, places, I mean, that's pretty eye-opening, really. It's all of it.
And I guess with your travels through the US for the first time, the back roads, the smaller towns and everything, you got to see how truly diverse the United States of America is as well.
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
It
Yeah.
was very cool going out west for the first time. It was definitely a goal of all of ours. We're big Western fans, and it's beautiful, but you know, it's so diverse as you go.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because we actually, during the pandemic, we've been, you know, we started writing almost a new record in a sense. And there was a couple of songs of material that we'd written, two songs, which was The Barbarians and Caraval on the album. And we were looking at these songs going, wow, this is really interesting because these two songs don't sound like a new record. They sound like they belong, you know, to the Battle at Karn's Gate. And so what we did is we took an RV from Nashville to Los Angeles, and just to see the sort of cultural evolution as you pass through the West, it's really interesting, and it is extremely diverse because, again, you know, I think it's just cultural diffusion, and this is America as a melting pot, a nation of immigrants. It's really interesting.
And by the way, Barbarians is one of my favorite songs on the record. Do you have a favorite song on there?
I think I would be disrespecting other songs on the record if I picked a favorite, but
Yeah.
I love them all, and they all mean something to all of us.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's one of those situations you're lucky to
Yeah.
have because they're all quite close. We're close to all of those songs. They all have a very unique story. Yeah.
Danny, you're in a really interesting position. One, you're the newest member of the band. Two, you're not a brother. Are you forever an outsider?
No, not really. To be
Yeah.
honest, we all treat each other pretty equally, and it's definitely best that way as far as musicianship and writing and touring. We're all experiencing the same new things all in unison together. So you know, I don't really look at it as a barrier. You know, it's more of an invitation.
Yeah. I mean, we're a band of brothers, you know, all four of us in a way.
But it is a unique dynamic having to work with three brothers who have their own little, let's say, ecosystem. Do you find yourself maybe sometimes being maybe the balance or a mediator or that voice of sober second thought?
I mean, sure. My last name is definitely different. We come from different backgrounds, and we definitely have, you know, just different upbringings in certain senses. So it definitely plays into factor. But you know, when we're all playing, it's this language that we're communicating to each other as we're playing. It's all the same. We you know, we're all very equal.
You play very nicely on the album, by the way. You play your parts perfectly. Everything is very, very thoughtful and nicely constructed. The drums are nice and fat. I mean, the whole thing is very, very spacious, but the whole production is very, very fat. Everything's got this really nice fullness to it. You can really dig in.
That's where all the flavor is, man.
This man is a hedonist. Let me tell you.
You got to work with Greg Kirsten. I think that's an interesting combination because more recently he's worked with Paul McCartney and he's worked on a whole bunch of Foo Fighters stuff. He's worked with bands and artists that are realized and helped you come to your realization. How did he help you shape where you're at right now and the new album?
There's definitely a reason he's worked with so many different renowned artists and all sorts of varieties, and it's because he's Greg Kirsten. He's a human encyclopedia and so knowledgeable, and really knows how to be that fifth member in the room. You know, he understands the role of a producer to the fullest. And as far as creating this album, he was so excited the entire time that it just kept the energy very positive in the room and helped out so much tonally, and you know, we never ever ran into a brick wall when we were sort of writer's block, so to speak, because he was just, you know, always there to offer some sort of very casual input the whole time, and he just kept the train moving.
Yeah, it's interesting what the role of a producer is, and I guess it really changes from project to project. But with you guys, I'm sure it was a different challenge than he would have with the Foos or Paul McCartney or something. Did you go in with everything fully? What you mentioned earlier, that not all the songs were complete when you went in there. How much did you create in the studio, and how easy did that come about?
It's interesting. I would say that perhaps 40% of the album was sort of sculpted during the process of recording, and that's interesting. I mean, I think as things develop, and this isn't something that we're strangers to. I mean, this is sort of how we've worked in the past as well. But as the sort of album starts to evolve and sort of substantiate, and we start to understand, you know, what it is, what the personality is, what the storyline is, what we're trying to say, that we're missing bits and pieces. So then it starts becoming, well, I think we need something folky or here, or we need something that's a soulful, or we need something that's a lullaby, or more blues based, or you know, and we need to try to tell this story as we go through. That's when we start writing and going, you know, home from the studio and coming in the next day with a bunch of ideas, and then that sort of happens throughout. I mean, that's sort of always how it goes, and it's interesting because you're already in that space. I think you are so much environmentally and consciously aware of what, you know, the Battle at Garden's Gate, for say in this instance, is becoming.
Yeah, some of our favorite albums over time, they're very dynamic. We never ever want to create an album where everything sounds the same. So it's super important to us. And like you were saying, you know, you kind of develop this sort of beginning to the album, and then you just fill in the rest of the pieces as you go.
Listening to it, I was thinking to myself, boy, this stuff's going to sound great live. And the neat thing about the album is it seems that you left enough in the arrangements that you can go out and create a new performance out of these sculptures when you're performing live, and perhaps do something a little bit different every night without straying too far and falling off your feet in front of 15,000 people.
That's the idea. Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, we've always been like, you know, fans of deviation, and I think, again, like Daniel speaks of earlier, I mean, that's just something that's within our sort of musical vocabulary. We've always been a group that enjoys stretching out and taking these, you know, these basic structures of music, and sort of, you know, trying to take it as far as one can go with it, and sort of, you know, dispatch it in front of 100,000 people. That's an interesting concept, but, you know, it's like, that's kind of where we're at as musicians and as artists. And I think that we enjoy that element of fear as well, because I think when you corner yourself, you really, you have to rise to the occasion. You have no other choice. You either fall flat on your face or you evolve. And that's kind of where we're at, you know?
And the funny thing is, you don't learn unless you fall flat on your face.
Bingo.
Absolutely.
You know, so sometimes you have to make those mistakes. And a lot of times those mistakes are things that you feel, but the audience doesn't hear. And if they do, it's gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's off into the ether, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. Have you guys had your shots yet?
I am the only one who has not. I've had some bad luck, but now that it's open to the public, I'm on my way.
So things for the next few months are a little bit unsure. What's the medium term timeline for you guys?
We're hoping, like everyone else, to get back out on the road as soon as possible. And we've heard many different things, but at this point, we're accustomed to not believing it until we see it.
Yeah.
sort of thing. It's, you know, you want to be careful. Obviously, that's first and foremost. You don't want to start things too early, but obviously we miss it dearly. So we're going to push to start it as early as we can. We're hoping to play a couple shows by the end of summer, and hopefully get things back on track by the end of the year.
Now, you guys are still playing a lot and probably playing together a lot, but I mean, there's a big difference between that and playing live. You think it's going to be a little while for you to find your legs when you get out there eventually.
That's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because we've talked to musician friends of ours, and it's one of those things where it's like it's either everybody's going to go back out and everybody's going to suck, or everybody's going to go back out and it'll almost return back to normal as is. But I think for audiences and performers and musicians alike, it's sort of going to feel like stepping back out into the sunlight, from the cave for the first time in a long time again. So
I think there will be a good healthy amount of nerves going into that first show, but I think it'll only take a couple seconds into the show before it feels like riding a bike again.
You know what? It's gonna feel like when you were a kid and you'd go out for gym and you'd have to go around the track 4 times, and you were really small and you didn't realize your limitations, and you go out and you'd start really, really fast. And after the first, you're really tired. How am I going to finish the next lap? So what you're probably going to find is the first couple of nights you're running on adrenaline. Then after a couple of shows, you're starting to get tired. And then all of a sudden you're going to start to catch your wind and get into shape again. And it'll be like getting on a bike, a little bit more complicated maybe.
Yeah, likely.
It'll be nice having new music too. It's always fun to just throw some music into the set, especially since it's very geared towards playing live.
Yeah, and you have so much to draw on now, eh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good for you. Well, what a pleasure it was to meet you guys. We saw you at the Velvet Underground when you first came to Toronto in the summer of 2018, 3 years ago already. And the leaps and bounds since then are astonishing, and I congratulate you guys. Good luck with everything. We can't wait to see you up this way in the greater Toronto area sometime soon.
Likewise. We're looking forward to getting back to Canada in particular.
Damn straight.
Yeah.